Cupra is the edgier brother of Volkswagen. And this, the Cupra Born, is allegedly the edgier brother of the VW ID.3. This Cupra has 77 kilowatt hours, it's electric, and it can theoretically do 340 miles on one charge. So on one charge, my aim is to drive from here, Wales, to Ireland, then Scotland, and then England, having a bit of fun as I go. It's a road trip. I'm Jonny Smith. Welcome to the Late Break Show. So, my journey kicked off at dawn in the magnificent Snowdonian mountain range of North Wales. I'm heading to Holyhead on Anglesey to catch the ferry across to Dublin. Now, in the real world, I could do this drive in one day and just about one charge going the most direct route, which is about 290 miles. But as we will be filming as we go, in order for you, the viewers, to enjoy it too, and also I might be cheeky and film a car cave episode along the way, we're stopping overnight, and in my eyes that makes sense to top the car up with electrons as I top myself up with sleep, because that's what you do in the real world, especially if you weren't obsessed with hypermiling. Because this isn't the fake world of TV Jeopardy, people, this is the Late Break Show. We're here in Ireland, obviously about to get the car out. This might not be exciting to a lot of people, but I've actually never been to Ireland. I've been all over the world as a car journalist. I'm very fortunate. I've been to Japan 9 times, I've never been to Ireland. As usual, on a ferry, someone's let their car go mental with the alarm, so let's find that. Another thing it's allowed me to do is, while I've been on the ferry drinking coffee and trying to wake up, it's made me realise the key is very premium. I'll show it to you when we're outside. Feels special, the key, and you don't say that a lot with modern cars. I've had very expensive cars with dismal looking keys. Look. Cupra. On the sort of quayside area in Dublin, trying to have a bit of an explore of the city. But most exciting cultural reference for me is a pub over there called the Ferryman, which I'm hoping might have served as inspiration by Krista Berg. One of the worst pop songs I can remember is "Don't Pay the Ferryman" by Krista Berg, Irish singer. There it is over there. I'm not going to sing it because I have to pay royalties to Krista Berg then. Don't pay the ferryman. Don't even set a price. Don't pay the ferryman till you get to the other side. Dublin. Quite congested. So, Cupra. The Cupra brand was born in 2018, the brand. The Cupra Born concept was born in 2019, I remember seeing it. But it wasn't branded as a Cupra, it's actually branded as a Seat, the Seat L Born, which is named after a district of Barcelona. Not relevant to Ireland at all. But weirdly, this car, I think the production Born, looks better than the concept, which doesn't happen very often at all. And this is priced higher than the car it's based on, the ID.3, because this is seen as a slightly more hot hatchy, I don't know, slightly more premium, which goes against what I believe about VW, because I think of VW as being higher than Seat. But of course, this isn't Seat, this is Cupra. Cupra, with that kind of like weird no-name superhero badge that I'm still not quite down with, but I am down with the initial feel and the quality of the Born, which I think is really good. So there are two battery sizes, 58 kilowatt hour and 77 kilowatt hour. The ID.3 is available also in a 45 kilowatt hour, which is more of a sort of battery for city use, I suppose. The Cupra currently doesn't have that option. So in the 58, you can get it in 204 PS or 230 PS. The 77, the big battery, this bad boy here, only comes in 230 PS power output. And this is slower to 62 than the smaller battery, I'm guessing because of the extra weight. But you have 340 mile WLTP, which is supposed to be excellent. Now, I have fully charged this car twice since borrowing it before we started filming. One of them said 268 mile range, one of them said 273 mile range, which I actually got up to 278 when I turned off the climate. So 278 real world miles rather than 340. That allows you to do, I mean, I did it, 4.5 hours of non-stop driving. Now the turning circle in the Cupra Born, same as the ID.3 of course, is really good because that electric motor is back there. It's rear wheel drive, which is close to the kind of original Beetle as you're going to get. It's got multi-link suspension at the back, it's got McPherson strut at the front, but it allows you to be able to manoeuvre in and out of cities very well. Prices. This will probably change as it has done frequently lately, because prices of cars are all over the place, aren't they, at the moment? But this now starts from 36.5 grand, the Born, and goes up to the range topper, which is about 41, which is this, actually. So it's not as cheap as it was. It's at least 3 or 4 grand more than it was when it was first born, the Born. But comes with quite a lot of standard, that's for sure. And typically between the V1, which is a trim level, the V2 and the V3, it's about 2,000 quid difference. I've been getting about 4 miles per kilowatt hour, which is okay actually. Late 3s on the motorway when I was driving last night. But the real world mileage that I've been getting, which seems to be about 270 for a charge on this big battery car, is around about the same is what I've been getting from my Kia Soul that I had, or the Hyundai Kona, both of which have a smaller battery. They have a 64 kilowatt hour battery, this is a 77. You're probably going, well Johnny, why would I buy one of these over an ID.3 when this is a bit more money? Well, I think the first answer is, this genuinely feels more expensive and exciting and premium. I think what Volkswagen failed to hit with the ID.3, in my eyes at least, is it feels a little bit cheap. It doesn't have that Volkswagen feel that you've been used to over all these years, and that kind of dissuades me from buying it. I haven't played with the special drive modes yet, where there's a steering wheel button, but I will do when we go out into the Irish countryside.
Once out of the Dublin city congestion, I took the scenic route up the coast to Clogherhead, a beautiful little harbour town. There's actually a couple of big wind farm projects 10 kilometres offshore in the Irish Sea. Now, why am I telling you that? Well, I like wind farms because in my experience, some EV owners come into the EV world from a renewable energy background, whereas others come into electric ownership because they simply want lower motoring overheads. But either way, I like the idea of renewably generating your own electricity and future-proofing your own car fuel.
The Cupra Born is a really good looking car. You see, whereas the ID.3 is quite sort of friendly and cute looking almost, and soft, this is chiselled and hard. The Born's a little bit aggressive. And the thing that I've noticed with the Born, wherever I've gone, is young people, especially lads, really like it. It catches their eye, they want to look at it because it looks like a proper hot hatch. It's got skirts, it's got lips, it's got little diffusers, and of course because of this cabin design of the ID.3 with a really sloping back windscreen and a stubby bonnet, I think it's got these angry little curves and this indentation here with the Cupra letters. I just think it works. I mean, I'm not big on the Cupra badge. I don't like the badge, but if it just said that. And of course, being Cupra, it's got these copper accents and they're inside as well. I'll talk about them later, but these copper inserts, they kind of work, I think. Remember, this is only available as a 5-door, And this is pretty much, I'll put the dimensions above here, but there's pretty much the same footprint as the Golf. I'm sorry I haven't driven this car sooner. A certain pandemic robbed me of getting a decent seat time in this car, so I thought instead of just doing a straight review, I'll actually take it on a longer trip. Hence why I'm on a beautiful part of Ireland right now, enjoying the sun going lower and lower, but I do have to get to the mountains. So that's what I think of the Cupra. And on the side here, it's got this crease, which is similar to the ID.3, but just seems to be much more than the ID.3. And I've got to say, I'm a harsh critic of rims on new cars. This is one of the most interesting alloy wheels of any new car out at the moment. I think it looks absolutely superb. And the one at the back cleverly covers the fact that it's still got drum brakes on the back, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. I'm just saying you don't want to see them when you look through a slick set of wheels. It just looks a bit cheap. And these are clad in electric car specific Goodyears. And what I would say is, because this is the top ranking car, the V3, this is on, I'm pretty sure, on 20s. Let's just check. Yeah, 215/45 20s. The V2 is on 19s and the entry level car is on 18s. Also, because it's a Cupra Born and not an ID.3, it's got wider wheels and tyres, it's got 15mm lower suspension on the front, 10mm lower on the rear. You know that suspension, multi-link rear, McPherson strut front, because it's rear motored, rear wheel drive. Let's go to the back. It's almost like it's a completely different car visually to the ID.3. They've managed to make it look so much better, I think, and do so much more of a premium job on it. Check out the back end here. This diffuser, this is the sort of thing that's drawing the young man's eye to the car as I go by these villages, I've noticed. It's that roof spoiler, which I think is the same as the ID.3, but this is very pronounced here. This silhouette, kind of like almost like a bow tie LED, which wraps around. And I forgot to say, the front, when the lights are on, the sort of like detail on the sides of the headlights are really quite precise and pretty. It looks like someone's really thought about it. This is actually, these are indentations, and there's more of these on the dash from memory as well, this sort of pattern. But what I like about the Born and the ID.3 is the fact that it's a good size for European and British roads, and the boot's a good size as well. I'm going to drive now, because although where we are, Clogherhead port and harbour is lovely, I've got quite a few more miles to go before I go to bed tonight. But I'm trying to enjoy it as well. Up on the mountain roads in Ireland here, losing the sun, and I'm torn. On the one hand, I could do this whole trip on one charge, I know that. But on the other, this is supposed to be a kind of EV hot hatch. That's the point of the Cupra Born, and I'm like, I want to press on a bit. It feels eager. It's got a lovely chassis to it. It really has. If you're expecting kind of Golf GTi levels of like scalpel sharp handling, it's not quite that, but you know what? There's other rewards to be had with the Born, I think. Because when you want to be economical with it, you can actually be really economical. And on the other hand, it's quite playful. And these roads are lending themselves beautifully to it. So I'm chasing the sun behind these mountains. I'm really enjoying the augmented head-up display, where it just casually tells you to keep in your lane without being intrusive, and casually gives you chevrons to turn left and right. It's almost like you've got a kind of robotic co-pilot, co-driver. And we're on really undulating mountain roads here, okay? The damping on this thing is superb. It feels golfy. It feels better than the ID.3 I drove, I'm certain of it. It's just more satisfying and more sporty. And this is on the 20s. This is on the 20-inch wheels. Imagine what it'd be like on the 18s or 19s. You don't need the 20s. You don't need the V3, the top car. In fact, I probably would recommend you don't get the top spec car. Save your money a bit. So here I've got the drive modes on my at my thumb tips here, and I can press Cupra Performance, which unlocks all of the 230 PS. On full throttle, it gives you that e-boost. I'm enjoying the combination of like hypermiling on the one hand, and then being able to kind of feed it through some interesting corners on the other. It does not feel like a heavy EV. I think it hides that EV heavy battery really well. But I'm especially impressed with the ride.
It was too dark to film arriving at our hotel in Bangor, but we had to get close to Belfast in order to catch the ferry in the morning, and we stayed at a place called the Clandyboy Lodge Hotel, which is a bloody lovely place. Sadly, they're not paying me to say this though.
It's very early in the morning, we've just woken up, and we're going now from where we are, near Bangor in Ireland, Northern Ireland, to Scotland, getting the early ferry, hence getting up early. And I could have actually probably done this trip all non-stop, because it's not like ridiculous amounts of driving, but A, this is real world and we have to actually film it, which means we have to repeat certain manoeuvres and stuff like that. And two, I wanted to enjoy a sleep overnight, but crucially I wanted to enjoy a sleep which has charging facilities, and it feels like a crime to not top your car up while you're topping yourself up with sleep. One piece of advice I can give you is, although it is cool to charge your car while you're sleeping, and you can search for hotels that have these facilities as part of their service, sometimes they're free, which is even better. But some of the tariffs of charges are getting a bit out of hand at the moment, so if it looks really expensive, you can always avoid it. There's always a way, even a 3-pin. Remember, even a slow 3-pin plug, you can laugh. If you're staying at a place for like 24 hours, you can fully charge on a 3-pin. Anyway, enough practical chat. Let's find this ferry, aka the Brian. I guess we're about halfway through our trip now almost, but two initial observations which I keep coming back to. One, can't believe how much more I'm enjoying this than the ID.3, given that they're sort of the same car, but this is tweaked. It does feel significantly better. Two, this big battery, the 77 kilowatt hour, it's a big battery, doesn't feel heavy at all, not at all. But we are not going to get 340 miles of range, and I knew that, but it looks like 280 is about the maximum in the real world that we'll get, which is about the same, I think, as a Kia and Hyundai 64 kilowatt hour battery. So, but yeah, if I bought it, I wouldn't be regretting it. I think that's something I always have to think of as a journalist. Look at the glazing on that. If you've known me for a while, I do love a hearse. I'm not weird and macabre. I just really like a hearse. It's quite a slick looking one. The boat's about to set sail. I've just noticed this one's got a triple exhaust. Nice. Just a triple. Coffee time, beans on toast. That's Scotland. I'm going to be in it in a minute. We've come from Belfast. We're going to land, then drive through Dumfries and then down towards the Lake District into England, which finalises our little route. Remember, we started in Wales, went across on the ferry to Southern Ireland, Dublin, up to Northern Ireland, across to that, and then into a lovely part of England, actually. Famous for rallies and stuff. Scotland, I'm going to be in you in a minute.
We docked and immediately picked up some gorgeous roads near Milton, heading towards the Galloway Forest. It's worth mentioning that the weather on this trip has been pretty cold and somewhat wet, all factors which always work against the overall range for an electric car. In milder weather, this Born would have done 300 real-world miles, I have no doubt about that. To me, still not quite as efficient as Korean EV offerings.
The Galloway Forest. It's a great driving road. Well, I've already got it in B mode on this little drive nodule, and B mode is the braking mode, the Regen braking mode for the ID.3 and this, the Cupra. There is only one Regen braking setting. You can't have multiples like other manufacturers where they have 2, 3, sometimes 4 Regen stages of aggression. This is one, that's it. And I get used to it. I like it. Personally, I always default to it. And it tells you how much regen you're doing on this actually very small, very subtle bar, sort of like graph, which goes into green when you back off the throttle and then goes into blue when you're using power. So I've stuck it in Cupra mode. There's performance mode, comfort mode, range mode, Cupra mode, and then you can individualize the steering feel, the air conditioning, the throttle response. But remember, with e-boost, that gives you all 230 PS, and 230 PS is used really, on full throttle, hard throttle positions. So this is a 7-second to 62 car, or 6.6 with the smaller battery and e-boost function. So it's not like going to out Tesla a Tesla in terms of raw performance, but I'm more of the opinion these days that I prefer a more of a package of a car, the drivability, the feel, the reward. And I really like the chassis of this. I really very much like the ride quality. This is a better chassis and better overall driving experience over many other EVs in its class, I would say. Definitely better chassis and dynamics than a Kia or a Hyundai and a Tesla, but probably not as efficient from what I can see as a Kia or a Hyundai or a Tesla in terms of like getting the most out of that battery chemistry. I think on this trip so far, bearing in mind I'm in Scotland right now, I've been averaging about 4 miles per kilowatt hour. That's a combination of a bit of motorway, an uphill and down dale, and a bit of town driving. I think 4's all right, 3.94. Even though the 0 to 60 is not the greatest, it feels eager, and it's that combination of like decent range and practicality on a run when you do find roads like this, like the Galloway Forest. I don't know, it just feels really like it's got you. And it doesn't behave like a rear-wheel drive car, so if that's what you want, you won't feel it. It's like that, but it feels warmed over hatch. Not intense hatch, but decent, really decent. And actually, to me, it feels like a Golf GTi. And it's mega when you see, even when you've been pressing on a bit, like now, I'm in the performance mode. I've got 200 miles of range left, 77% charge. It's good to see that. You don't get anxious. In fact, on this whole journey, I've not got anxious at all. If you're watching this thinking, I just don't know whether I would get the kind of feel from a hot hatch of old in this electric version, do go and try it. Don't just watch my reviews and presume that what I'm saying is absolute gospel. Try these things for yourself. I can give you my opinion, I can give you some of the facts, but do try it for yourself. Do not poo-poo it. I think this is a really decent car, but it just so happens I've found some really bloody decent roads as well.
From the forests of Galloway, we then pick up a couple of the main roads and motorways heading across east and then south towards the Lake District in northern England. Ordinarily a beautiful place, but the weather gets worse and worse and worse and worse.
As you can see, the weather is absolute gash. We've come from Galloway Forest, which was glorious. In fact, one of the best driving roads I think I've been on in the United Kingdom. We all agreed on that. That is highly recommended. We've come down via Gretna Green, Just stopped off at the services here in near Carlisle, and we're heading to the Lake District. I needed a number 2 quite badly and a little smidge to eat, and in that time I thought I'd put it on, have a quick tickle on 50 kilowatts. Remember, this thing will charge up to 135 kilowatts. It'll do 5 to 80% charge in 35 minutes. Now 135 kilowatts is not as high as some of its competitors, but it's pretty good. And it means I can crack on now, which I'm going to do. Unfortunately, we haven't got as much footage as we'd like of the various driving roads, but anyway, let's cut to some aspirational B-roll that's not in a rainy car park. Go. Britain, isn't it beautiful? It's lashing down, and we're at Ullswater in the Lake District. That there is Ullswater, beautiful, idyllic. Normally, actually quite grey and miserable right now, almost as grey as the car. Anyway, this concludes our trip really, and I hope you've enjoyed what is really an embellished review of the Cupra Born. This is a car that I could have driven a while ago and I never got round to it, so I thought I'd just take it on a bit of a journey and also show people you can go on interesting journeys in EVs, and you can also have EVs that are really good drivers' cars, which I knew already, but this has definitely confirmed that. What isn't very easy is navigating this. The troublesome Volkswagen-derived infotainment system, which I believe the person who designed it has been sacked, and I do agree with that because it's appalling. So this lower, but there's no buttons, no normal buttons for any easy to access stuff. The likes of the Korean car manufacturers, they do put some buttons down. Tesla don't, of course. Everyone seems to be following Tesla with the stuck-on tablet. Well, the stuck-on tablet thing's not really my bag because it doesn't integrate into the design of the dash that I do like, but I have found as I'm driving, I'm resting my hand on it and using my thumb, steadying my thumb to go through these menus, because it's really hard to touch screens when you're driving around, and quite dangerous. But also, for example, I want the heated steering wheel on, right? Where is it? It's not down here because that's climate and volume, and that's not lit at night, which a few people have found out the hard way, which is a terrible idea. So when I want to heat the steering wheel, where do I go? What do I do? Where do I go? Climate. Oh, there. Okay, so we're in the climate, right? We've had to go in here. I find it really confusing. I mean, I've been driving this car for 2 days. I still find it confusing. Can't seem to work out when you turn the air conditioning off whether you can still have some sort of heating. So yeah, 3-stage heated steering wheel in a menu, which is annoying. I'd like it just to be here or here. And this comes as standard on all the models of Cupra Born. But you can't get heated seats unless you go for the V2 option, the middle grade car, which I think is a bit odd. They should all have heated seats. I've really enjoyed driving the car. I think to drive, it's brilliant. I think the way, I mean, obviously it's a bespoke chassis on this for an electric car, and it really shows. It's so much better than the car it's based on. The design inside, you've got the Cupra copper in various parts. So center console here with a bit of a kind of Venetian blind. For 2 cup holders, you can see I've got my road food in here, and I've got a coffee here. And then down here, what looks like, it's like a rubberized slope for a phone, but there's only a tiny lip on it. And if you get it wrong, which I have numerous times, your phone disappears down into this black hole. It's a huge trough. It just disappears. You never see it again. It's gone. I really like the materials inside the Cupra. They've made a much better go of it than the ID.3. I really believe that. I think it's great. I love the recycled fibres on the floor mats, the seats. LEDs inside here, kind of mood lights. You've got this weird thing with the, you press the button to activate the rear electric windows. So there's only 2 buttons for the electric windows. It's a cost-saving thing. The same as the screen. This is a cost-saving thing. Less buttons, more integrated in the touchscreen, but I just don't think it answers a question that anybody asked. I think it's also making driving more distracting and dangerous. And that's not directly at Volkswagen Group cars, it's across the board. Boot. I was going to show you the boot, but it's monsoon out there. But the boot's 385 litres, which is like 4 litres more than a Golf. 1,267 litres with the seats down, so it's smaller than a Nissan Leaf. The Leaf's got a huge boot, 420 litres I think. But all you need to know is that the boot of a Golf has always been good and pretty class leading, and this is slightly bigger than that. And I think that the legroom in the back is excellent as well. I was sceptical that the Born wouldn't have its own identity because it's based on another car, the ID.3. But actually, it's got a better identity than the car it's based upon. People think that this is a hot hatch. It's been pitched as a hot hatch. It's not a hyper hatch. But actually I'm glad it isn't, because I think it makes it a better all-round package as a consequence. It does range really well. It's extremely comfortable, and it's just a well-judged car. And it can be a great amount of fun, especially on the sort of roads I've found it on. And that's what gives it its supremacy, because the Born does have some supremacy. And I think its supremacy is, no, it's not really, really rapid, but it's a sharp tool. It's a great driver's car. It's taken me by surprise, actually, how good it is. I don't understand how they've made it so good when the car it's based upon, I thought, was a little bit lackluster. Let's not dwell too much on the infotainment. I've said my piece about that, but the rest of the car, really good. So, the ultimatum on the Born. I think it's fantastic. I really like it. I've given you the facts and hopefully I've given you my opinion, but don't always take my word for it. Before you buy a car like this, Evie, I would always urge you to test it for yourself against its rivals to see if it suits you. I can only give you what I experience over a couple of days, and that's what this is. But I've also proved, I hope, that you can get an electric car that's a really enjoyable driver's car with a good degree of range that doesn't break the bank. And I would buy the large batteried version, the 77 kilowatt hour. I've just noticed these details, they're brilliant. There's some lovely details on this car. And I like the copper, but I don't like the logo. But it's okay, I'll forgive it. Thank you for watching my Cupra Born review on the Late Break Show. If you want to see my playlist for electric cars, because typically I review 50% electric cars on this show, I'll put the link somewhere on the screen now. Subscribe if you haven't already. Comment as well. Maybe you have already ordered or you own a Cupra Born. What do you think of it compared to its rivals? Maybe you want to become a patron of this channel, and typically you will get access to these videos earlier than the other people do. I'm very wet. Goodbye.
So in summary then, the route that I took on this EV road trip in the Born totaled 351 miles excluding the ferry crossings. That isn't doable in the real world in the Born, but what would have been doable is if I'd done a direct route, which would have been 287 miles. Bear in mind, the distance of 351 that I took, taking in all the scenery, is easily achievable with one charge. Either a short rapid charge or a slow overnight charge like I took at the hotel.